stance, or beliefs expressed on the following program by the host, guests, or callers are not necessarily the opinions of FantasyXS.com, Media Group Inc., ownership, management, sponsors, or website.
All rise, football fans, as the Welt Rheaume Miami Dolphins report with Marcel Jacques is in session.
Welt Rheaume has more than 62 years of litigation experience handling insurance disputes. They are committed to resolving even the toughest insurance claims quickly. Call them for a free consultation. 954-966-4646. Here's Miami Dolphins insider Marcel Jacques.
There he is, locked and loaded and ready to go. How you feeling, my man? You good?
Yeah, man, I'm good. We did it. You know, it's officially week one. We made it. I think I counted the days, 209 or something like that. 290 days since football was last played. Real NFL football was last played. So ecstatic to be back, man. And we got practice coming up here soon. Get to see, a couple of the guys who I've been dealing with some injuries through the end of the preseason and off season. See, how they make their return. And then before we know it, we're going to blink and it's January.
Yep. And folks, don't forget 954-966-4646. Welt Rheaume is in Hollywood. If you need them here in South Florida, you call those insurance companies first. You call Welt Rheaume. They have their own adjusters. So bankruptcy, condo damage, criminal defense, business owner claims, personal injury, call our friends at Welt Rheaume. All right. So folks call Welt Rheaume to be safe. Are the Dolphins safe at their backup position? Because we now know who will be the backup quarterback.
Yeah, it's Mike White. And essentially what we heard from McDaniel here, it was a good competition throughout the offseason. Skyler's got his ups and downs, but you know what you're getting from Skyler. I think it's a pretty, high-ish floor, low ceiling type of quarterback play. I think he reverted to hero ball a little more than he usually will in regular season when we saw him this past preseason. But with Mike White, McDaniel loved how much he grasped the offense in such a short amount of time. And that high caliber play that you can get with Mike White. You know what he is capable of. We've seen it. The 300, the 400-yard passing experiences. I think they're banking on that. In terms of consistency with the backup quarterback, you hopefully never see consistent play from your backup quarterback because you don't want to ever see your backup quarterback playing. So I think what they see with Mike White is a guy who, can get them a flash in the pan if need be. If Tua misses a game or two, he can go out there, he can keep this offense running at a high level. And that's ultimately, that veteran experience. I think that's ultimately what won him the job here.
Yeah, no, listen, in the end, I think that following that follow-up by Skyler cost him because he looked fantastic one week and then he made some boneheaded mistakes the following week after that. And I think that the extremes kind of hurt him. Like, okay, he's kind of young, whereas Mike White really doesn't have those extremes. He's either kind of steady and isn't really going to, blow things up like it did for Skyler in that following outing. And I think that following outing really hurt him, actually.
It was tough because, again, the first time we saw Skyler this offseason, this preseason, it was rough. It was a rough game, but he was playing with third and fourth stringers and guys that weren't going to make the roster. He got a chance in game two to run with more second string guys and, players who didn't make the 53. I mean, lo and behold, he looked like a serviceable NFL quarterback. And then, like I said, reverted back to that erratic hero ball that we didn't see from him last regular season there against the Jaguars. And it ultimately, it didn't look great. Now, we didn't really get to see a whole lot of Mike White. Obviously, he started game one. He led a few red zone drives. They didn't finish, but we can give them a pass there in the preseason. There is no red zone package because you're not watching tape like that in the preseason. But I think he's just a more steady presence with a higher ceiling and that veteran background and the money that they're paying him. Ultimately, that's going to win you the job. It's going to win you the job when it's close.
I talked about this last week leading up to the Canes and Miami of Ohio, and you're wondering where's he going with this. And so I talked about this and I said, Mario Cristobal has to have his moment in this game. And it's not because it's Miami of Ohio, it's because his team looked unorganized and unprepared a lot of times last year. His team made a lot of stupid mistakes last year, things that you weren't really expecting from Mario Cristobal. And he had his moment against Miami of Ohio. His team looked competent. They looked like they knew what they were doing. They weren't committing a bunch of stupid penalties and all that kind of stuff. They looked responsible. They did what they were supposed to do to Miami of Ohio because they have the talent. So Mario had his moment that he could show people, hey, what I inherited was a mess. We flushed out a bunch of that stuff. Look what the result is. Well, I see in the press conference you guys, asked, and you had to ask, but you weren't going to get an answer, obviously. And Barry kind of threw it out there like, hey, last year Brandon Staley did some stuff to stifle your offense, and are you ready to counter it, all that kind of stuff. Well, last year, Mike McDaniel did not do well against coaches that he coached with, actually. Against his former coaches, he had a losing record. In fact, I think he went winless against all of his former assistants, right?
He beat Salah.
That's right.
He beat Salah.
That's right. He did. So that was his only former coaches. And Staley and defense kind of stifled them last year on offense.
Yeah, that was what I really wanted to know, and because we are going to head out to practice here soon. But what I wanted to know is that you never really got to work your way out of this rut. That Chargers game was kind of the beginning of the end for this offense's high-end productivity, and it never got to work its way out before Tua was hurt against the Packers. So I wanted to know how much that impacted, how this team approached the offseason, how much of a motivator that was. And Mike just said straight up, look, man, we looked at this, for 1 season. It's not something that we held on to. It's not something that we harped over. And I think you're going to say that publicly. He said individually there might be some guys who say, okay, I got you this year. You got me last year, but I got you now, just because that's the nature of football. But I think privately it has to be some sort of motivator because they whooped your butt on national television. And at no point were you in control of that game. Matter of fact, the only points you scored were off a 60-yard fumble recovery, a fluke. Let's be honest, a fluky fumble recovery, and then a 60-yard bomb to Tyreek, which that's less fluky. That's a little less fluky. That happens.
That Mike McDaniel has to have a moment here, like Mario, like, okay, hey, I could coach a team that's going to be responsible. He did it. I think Mike McDaniel has to kind of answer. He has to have a counter to what happened last year. So I think that this is kind of a moment for Mike McDaniel to kind of prove to folks that, hey, yeah, I'm a bright guy, I'm a smart guy, all that, but I can also counter to things like this. And that game made him look bad. I think his coaching staff has to look really good this Sunday.
I think it's a big moment for them, and not just and beyond like the individual. Where I think he does have a point, and I do want to give him credit, is like you can't hyper focus on the emotion and the ego that this game will bring, because you're not just at the Chargers and then home free for the rest of the season, right? You're at the Chargers, then you're at the Patriots on Sunday Night Football. Then you got to host the Broncos. And, by week 3, I'm not going to say we're going to know the Broncos are world beaters, but let's assume they're going to be better coached than they were last year. It's not a pushover. They still have talent all around that team. So you got them in the week 3, then you got to go at the Bills in week 4, and you're hosting, I believe it's the Panthers and the Giants back to back at home. Like, that's not an easy, cakewalk schedule. There's no real lull in that schedule. And the AFC, specifically the AFC East, it's not a division that's going to allow much margin for error. Like, you can't afford to get 3 games back too early in the season. So it's a critical start. But if you put all your emotion into this week 1 game, you put all of your heart and your soul to the point where it's going to make or break you, then you've got a tough awakening coming up over the next month of the season. So it's an important game, and I believe them. It's in the Coach Speak Hall of Fame. It's an important game because it's the next one, but it's not something that I think, is – I don't think Mike's got Brandon Staley's face posted on his wall with throwing knives stuck all in the paper. Like, I think it's important. I think it will feel good to beat the Chargers after what happened last year, but I don't think that it is overall a focal point for this team. Like, I don't think they're obsessing over it.
But it's important for them to answer back. It's important for the coach, and it's important for Tua, because obviously those are one of the games that he didn't play well. So, and Tua's one of those guys that takes receipts. So he's going to remember he didn't play well in that game. He's going to want to perform against the Chargers.
Yeah, and again, I just wrote about this. It might be out today. I don't know actually when it posts, but I've written about it that this is his first. It's his first real game back, and the jiu-jitsu application that we've seen over the past few weeks has been great. It's been great, but it's against teams that don't have an elite pass rusher, and it's preseason. They're going up against – this is like the one time a year that you don't want to face the Chargers, like when they're healthy. Inevitably, they always get hurt and break down toward the end of the season. That's just kind of the precedent they've set. But Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa are still quite healthy. Derwin James is still quite healthy. Like, there's some dudes on this defense that are going to make they're going to make life a little tricky for him, especially if, like last year, they forced him to hold on to the ball a little bit longer and take away that middle of the field and the things that he's comfortable with, that this offense is comfortable with.
By the way, Bosa likes to line up on the left side, which is right in front of Austin Jackson. So Austin Jackson is going to have himself one hell of a test already to open up the season. So
big moment coming for him.
Where Austin Jackson is at, boy, you're going to find out like right away. By the way, the most important thing when you go out to practice is that you see Teron Armstead lining up at left tackle, correct? I was
about to say, I don't think he's going to practice today. I think we're being let out right now, so I might have to run. But we're not expected to see Teron Armstead at practice today. Brandon Jones, Devon A-Chain, and who am I forgetting? Jones, A-Chain. I cannot remember the third. There's a third name. Check my Twitter account, and I've tweeted it out. But at the very least, those two are going to be practicing.
Okay. All right. Good stuff. Follow him on Twitter at Marcel_LJ. We'll catch him later on in the week as we get closer to opening week and the Dolphins taking on the Chargers on the road. Marcel, thank you as always. We'll catch up later in the week, my friend. Appreciate you.
Yes, sir. Appreciate y'all.
This has been another session of the Welt Rheaume Miami Dolphins Report with Marcel Jacques. At Welt Rheaume, they don't get paid unless you win. They handle complex personal injury claims caused by the fault of another in both state and federal courts. They handle auto, trucking, motorcycle slip and fall, and bicycle accidents. Call 954-966-4646. Welt Rheaume can help.
This is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.